Good morning. And so yesterday, in three phases, I send you back this ball. I started in the morning and I had some issues because the sun came up and I don't want to send you in the hot sunlight. And also the newspapers that were on the picnic table that I was using to protect the picnic table from hide glue driblets, a breeze came up and blew them all over. So I was able only to really do the first layer. I'm a big person on patterns. It's not so particular if you're doing a longer bow with less stress is placed on it, because longer bows can get longer draw lengths and they aren't as stressed as these short bows. And so you could get away with doing like a layer starting at the center from side to side and then overlapping another continuous layer side to side, a full width layer, and then another one, another. But on one of these short bows, you really have to do your best to get a brickwork pattern. And by that I mean multiple rows all staggered, and then staggering the next layer if you do another layer uh, from your start. And then the third layer needs to be staggered again. You need to really mix it up. And the smaller your bundles on the individual bundles that you're laying on here on this short high stress bow, the better off you are. And so the first two layers, and let's forget that I did like the edges first. Let's just, do like normal people. Usually starting down the center, overlap, 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 overlap. And on these shorter bows, I give it a longer overlap than on a longer bow, because the last thing you want to do is on these highly stressed things is like shear, which is theoretically possible. And so down the center, and then normally one on either side, and then the edge layer. And maybe cleaning up the edges a little bit, with little random whatevers. And so there are 5 rows on this. I wrapped it because I had to take some time off. And I can say that if you're experienced, you can sinew back a bow, let it dry. A lot of people do this, especially with the Asiatic corn bows. And then put another layer, let it dry, put another layer. But I wouldn't recommend adding layers to a dried back unless you're experienced. There is the possibility for delamination. So in these early stages, I would definitely add layers before it dries all the way. The nice thing is, if you do a layer and wrap it, let it sit for a little while, within a day, you unwrap it to put your next layer on, you're going to see a color difference. If you were to do 3 layers all at once, boom, and then boom, boom, all in one session, it gets really hard to tell where you left off because it all looks the same. But just giving it a little drying time, it changes its appearance a little bit. It allows you to definitely see where you left off, on those bundles. And so it's an easy technique. So in the morning did that. In the afternoon, I had an employee come in for a few hours. She's younger, so there's a maximum number of hours during the school year that she can work, but she was able to put in 4 hours. Went back up to the house, unwrapped it, did the second layer down the center, but shifting down the bow, so then there's an overlap over the overlaps, down the center, sides, edges, wrapped it up. In the evening, I did layer number 3, which is 3 bundles, not 5, but 1 down the center, a thickish one, and I kind of humped it. You can sculpt Sinew. And then the other 2, 1 on either side, kind of edged it to form this curve. Then I wrapped it. I used 2 layers of gauze. You want to pay particular attention when you're wrapping, because if you don't get even pressure, you can actually slide stuff sideways. So the first layer, I squish it down, but I don't really put the Gorilla Tug on it. While I'm talking, I might as well unwrap it, because let's see what this looks like dried overnight. The second layer, then I do it going the opposite way. Say I spiraled it this way, the second layer I do it the opposite way, and I really reef on it. I really put a lot of pressure. And I shall roll this up, because when I'm not doing a video, I put it back because I can reuse the stuff. Hide glue is cool because you do not have the sticking like you would with Titebond. See this, even with the totally fresh hide glue, if you wrap it, just pulls up like this cleanly. You don't have it like, Urgh. So here we go, 3 layers. The total weight of the sinew, because I had to prepare more last night for layer number 3, is probably bordering on 3.5 ounces of sinew. That's a lot. You don't need to have that much. I saw a museum bow. I don't remember if it was like Western or Eastern Dakota or Lakota. It was from that area. It was made from choke cherry, and the woodwork was, I'm going to say, on the roughish side because you could see tool marks on it. It had a thin layer of sinew. Definitely not this much. And it was a working bow. It's an actual bow, and so you don't need to get that much. But if you look down this way, you can see that nice hump. It's relatively even. And then a close-up. And so that is what we have, utilizing patterns, and it dries faster on the edge, so it's getting kind of clear there. No separations. I am, after this, the videoing, I'm going to wrap it again and really tighten it down. Because as this stuff dries, it shrinks, and then the wrapping becomes looser. And so I am going to reef on it. I'm going to allow it to dry somewhat slowly. It's going to be in the coolest place I can find in the dark. Now I'm going to let it dry for maybe a day or two until it really shrinks down, unwrapping it and then rewrapping it tighter each day. Now the native people would wrap, and you can see the traces on the bow of the wraps, very faint, the spiraling. Some of the actual bows, whether or not they're West Coast or Northern Plains or wherever they would sinew back, Southwest, you would see traces of those spirals from the wrapping, whether it's cherry bark or the inner bark of another tree, whatever. It serves a couple purposes. It helps squeeze out, which I don't see because I don't use an overabundance of glue. It helps squeeze out excess hide glue or sinew glue, or fish bladder glue, because it adds weight, adds mass, and it also compacts it. So this will be a finer surface for painting if that's what I wanted to do. Very little sanding. I will go over it. I will sand it to some degree to smooth it out, especially if it's going to be snakeskin backed, because it helps, snakeskin, it doesn't have crevasses to fit into. And the smoother this is, that means you're going to be you're removing less sinew. What's the point of putting a bunch of stuff on there and then removing it just to get a smooth back? And this will allow me to do very, very fine, very almost non-existent sanding to smooth it down to a very high level without having to remove much of the stuff. Now, I was watching another video, hi Go Geronimo, and somebody was asking about Osage bows. And they were saying they didn't think that it was necessary. Well, it depends on the length. It depends on the relative radius of bend you're imparting on that bow. Yep, if you were to make a 66-inch or greater length Osage orange bow that's not going to be 1,000,000 pounds in draw, there really isn't any great need if the rings are of good size, if the back is intact, to back it. If you're getting into a long bow like that, what you're going to be doing is adding mass and not really getting that much return if it's a 50-60 pound bow. And so it's not necessary to sinew back a longer Osage bow. If it's shorter, maybe up to 64 inches, it depends on the draw length, then sinew backing is an option. If it's a bow with suspicious knots or makes cracking sounds, why not? It's good insurance. It's It's a good substance to use. It doesn't have the return in tension energy, storage, that rawhide doesn't have the same oomph that sinew does, but it's a good thing to do. Some people would sinew back it and then rawhide back it so they could paint on it, add some weather protection. But I don't do that because it just adds weight. With a smooth job like this, if I wanted to paint it, which I'm not going to paint this bow, then it's not necessary because it's smooth. It's not necessary to rawhide back it. It's kind of a weight thing. Although, it's a good technique, then rawhide isn't going to add a tremendous amount of weight. If you want to go 100% authentic, you could just grease the stuff or not. If it gets wet, if it rains on it, let it dry off. It can be repaired if you don't grease it. And repairing if edges lift off, whatever. If you're not so picky as far as finishes that aren't 100% natural, Minwax's Ultimate Floor Finish is compatible with this stuff. I also, on that cedar bow, used Helmsman Spar urethane. It might be hard to get the Ultimate Floor Finish in quart size. You might have to buy a gallon. The nice thing about it, it's not one of these things that dries out fast. I've had the same gallon can for a year and it's still fine. It doesn't skin over. Helmsman Spar urethane will add a darker color. The Ultimate Floor Finish basically doesn't change the coloration. Both are urethanes or polyurethanes. They're not like oil finishes, oil-based finishes. The urethanes and polyurethanes will not grow brittle as they age. I've heard some people say that the oil-based finishes will dry out and become brittle over time. And that is a concern if you're considering the longevity of a bow. There was another thing I was going to mention. I'll hold this up while I'm thinking. Let's see, finishes. Well, if I can't think of it, in the next few seconds, I'll just close this down. Tight bond. I believe it was Ryan Gill. And I apologize if I'm getting the name wrong. There was an article in Primitive Archer magazine, and he had a hickory bow, shorter one that he wanted to sinew back, and he lives in Florida, steamy Florida, very humid, not conducive to sinew backing. Well, he experimented, and it turned out well. Instead of using the hide glue or fish bladder, whatever, the natural glues, he used Titebond 3, which is 100% waterproof, and had good results. And sometimes you have to do what you have to do. If you live in a very humid environment, Titebond 3 is an alternative which would allow you to have a sinew-backed bow. You can't change the humidity in an area. Maybe in the Philippines also, there's more than a few Filipinos that have contacted me about building bows and stuff, and I do not believe you can get Titebond 3 in the Philippines. However, there probably is, because they construct things everywhere, probably a comparable carpenter cement that's like 100% waterproof, and that works the same way as Titebond 3. My last little bit is I never thought I would give a shout out to this person because I differ from him in so many ways philosophically, but he got me thinking. It's like I started carrying this thing around. This is a PT Excellence patch. You get it if you can score over 300 on your PT test, and I was able to do that when I was 40. I went back into the National Guard when I was 40 in armor as a tanker. National Guard had this great thing, try a year, and it sounds so festive, and it's like, I always wanted to try a tank. So if you're a veteran, you're allowed to sign up for just a year to try something out. Try a year. Who would turn that down? I want to drive tanks, and so I did it. And at that time I was a gym rat, in probably the best shape of my life when I was 40, so I was able to do 75 push-ups and comparable number of sit-ups and run the 2 miles and score over 100. well, I don't want to be that person that is like this. That was the greatest time of my life. I want to get back up there, and so I'm carrying this thing around as a motivator. I've slid. I have backslid, and so somehow, because I'm a fan of Varg Vikernes, great guy. Um, watch these two things. It's like Varg versus the Golden One, and the Golden One is a trip to watch, believe me. Um, but he's talking about, physical fitness. I'm just talking about his philosophy towards physical fitness. Now, on one hand, you have Varg, who, if you were in an apocalypse, I would rather be with Varg than the Golden One, because the Golden One could probably haul big rocks around, but Varg would know how to repair a car. Enough said. And watching the Golden One at first, I was kind of like, is this guy for real? But then him talking just about going to the gym and physical fitness and being healthy and stuff like that, it's like, hey, the time is now. I'm not going to keep putting it off. I'm going to get back into running. I'm not going to be a gym rat again. I want to be able to do push-ups and sit-ups and stuff like that because of my physical job here. But at least getting back to where I'm running. And so my legs are sore because I've been hitting it hard lately, running. Yesterday was kind of funny. I've got signs out in the preserve, nice small, not non-obnoxious signs, at the beach, at the observation deck, and at the pond. This is, we need your help, can't be everywhere at once, especially when I'm alone. So I get calls from people who take this place seriously and will say, there's somebody running in the dunes, there's somebody doing this, there's somebody doing that. And when I'm by myself checking in cars, I have to sprint. And at the backside of the preserve, on the short trail, it's more than a quarter of a mile, so it's like sprinting down there and then sprinting back. And so I believe in this 90-degree heat, as an ancient 55-year-old guy, I probably sprinted about 2 miles yesterday, aside from everything else. And honestly, I appreciate it, because it's forcing me to get back into better health. And that's what it is. In the primitive archery world, it's about natural, and it's not only being able to make bows, boys and girls, but it's also maintaining one's health at no matter what level you are. I know that there's some people out there that aren't going to be runners. There's people out there watching me that aren't going to be Olympic weightlifters. But all we need to do is just improve our health a little bit, our physicality. And so if you're a walker, don't mind walking, go out and walk today. If you used to be a runner and you're still, able to, mix some trotting or jogging along with your walk. It's the hardest part is the first 5 minutes. So I'm telling you, just tell yourself that you're going to run or walk for 5 minutes, and I can almost guarantee that 5 minutes is going to turn into a half an hour. That's the way to do it. That's the way to do it, and feel good the next day when you're feeling your muscles complain in ways that, like, it didn't happen the previous day. That's good. Get out and do something. Get out and do something. With that, I'm going to close. Let's have a beauty shot. This is going well. Now I'm going to rewrap it super duper tight and doing it in opposite directions every time I do it. Now it's the waiting game. It's the waiting game. Letting it dry for a while, day or two, slowly, and then when this bow gets to the point where it's clear and when you push on it you can't feel it give, then you can start speeding it up. After maybe 2 weeks, if it's still sunny, after 2 weeks, I wouldn't do this now, making sure that it's wrapped tightly in the handle on the inside curve. I might put it in my car if we still have sunshine and just start baking the snot out of it. Now in some bows, you shouldn't start doing the final tiller until like 5 months, on the West Coast style paddle bows, because of that big reflex. You have to take a long time. But on these, they're not as temperamental as far as tillering and such. And so you can probably get by in a couple months. I can probably start doing some gentle final tillering, get it even. I'll have a good judge of it, and then if I want, after a couple months, I can shoot it gently, not full draw. And then after 6 to 8 months in a normal, I apologize, if you're in Florida and stuff, I don't want to say you're abnormal, but if you're in a moderate temperate climate like Michigan, um, Midwesty place, after, I don't know, there's so many variables, 6 months, it'll probably be fully cured. And with that, now I shall close. Thank you for watching. Appreciate your viewership. Have a great day.